Diana Graham, you are indicted on the charge of assault with intent to cause grievous bodily harm, in that at Fulchester on April the 7th of this year, you assaulted Charles Edward James with intent to cause him grievous bodily harm. I plead you, are you guilty or not guilty?
It depends from which point of view you look at it.
You will answer the charge, guilty or not guilty.
But I must be truthful.
That goes without question.
Well, I suppose in a sense then I'm guilty. I mean, it was just me and him, and he did fall
Your
down.
Honour, the actual incident is not in dispute. My client's defence is that she was defending herself from an attack by Mr. James, and during the tussle, Mr. James accidentally fell.
Mr. Hurst, is your client capable of understanding the charge? Then behave as though you do. How do you plead?
Not guilty.
Very well.
Thank you.
Mr. Hurst, has your client been instructed on how to behave in the dock?
She has, Your Honour. I'm sure it's just a question of being nervous rather than intentional. The occasion, the court, the atmosphere.
Yes, I think I follow you, Mr. Hurst. I warn you, I will not tolerate any interruptions from the dock. Nor will you speak again until you give evidence.
In this case, His Honour Judge Waitman presides, Mr. Hurst appears for the defendant, Diana Graham, and Mr. Fry appears for the prosecution. The case you're about to see is a fictional one, but the procedure is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public.
Members of the jury, in presenting the prosecution's case, I intend to show that the accused was guilty of a malicious and quite deliberate act of violence, that she did most definitely intend to cause Mr. James as much physical hurt as lay within her power. The prosecution will present evidence that will show beyond all reasonable doubt that the accused is guilty.
Are you thirsty?
You're not going to smoke?
There's plenty of time for a coffee if you'd like one.
I'm not thirsty.
You realise Sandy won't be called for some time.
I don't want you to upset her.
Have you tried to stop her?
Is it likely? We're here, aren't we?
Influence her, then. My solicitor was concerned.
Well, he needn't have been. I've told her to tell the truth.
I'm sorry she has to be involved.
Are you?
Can you doubt that? She's our daughter. I love her.
Yes.
And you. Hello, Sandy.
Daddy?
You nervous?
No.
Good. When you go in and you see the counsel in their robes and the judge in his wig, just imagine them in the bath.
We were just going for a coffee.
Mr. Charles Edward James.
The whole truth and nothing but the truth.
You are Charles Edward James of 35 Dorset Gardens Road, Fulchester.
I am.
Mr. James, will you tell the court what happened on the evening of Friday, April the 7th this year?
Well, we had had the day out, my son, my daughter, and myself. And in the evening, I took them back to their mother's flat.
Yes, you have, in fact, been living apart from your wife for the past 18 months?
Yes. I have my son. My wife has custody of my daughter. But we try and arrange things in the best way for the children. Well, I'd had my daughter for the day. We went sailing. And in the evening, I took her back.
And what time would this have been?
About 8 o'clock.
Was the accused present?
No, not when I arrived. She turned up an hour later. We were all there, having a chat and a drink. The children liked us being together like that. But she spoilt it.
The accused?
Yes.
What did she do?
Well, she turned up, ignored me, said hello to the children, went over and poured herself a drink, and then started talking to my wife as though I wasn't there.
What did you do?
Well, it had been a nice day. I didn't want to spoil it by rising to her. She obviously wanted a row. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction, so I got up and left.
But you returned later?
Yes, at about 10:30.
Why did you go back?
Well, when I got home, I put my son, Mark, to bed. He's 7. He was very tired and he went straight to sleep. But at about 10, he woke up. I heard him calling. I went in to see what was wrong. He was crying. He'd woken up and remembered he had left his plane at Beth's flat. Well, he'd been making the thing all week and he was obsessed with it at the time. I knew there was only one way to calm him down, so I said I'd go across and get it from his mummy's. I drove across and got there at about 11. Beth answered the door. She was in her dressing gown. Diana wasn't about, so I assumed she'd gone to bed.
I just want to clear this matter up. The flat belonged to your wife.
Yes, that's right.
And the defendant was staying in the flat.
Yes, well, Beth got nervous being on her own. There had been a burglary in the downstairs flat. Beth met Diana. She was separated from her husband, living on her own. So Beth asked her to stay.
Yes, I see. Yes, Mr. Fry.
You arrived back at the flat at 11 o'clock.
Yes, Beth was ready for bed, but she asked me in. We sat down and had a couple of drinks. I said I'd come for Mark's plane, but I wanted to talk to her. I said I'd been giving our relationship a lot of thought. I said I thought we ought to give it another try. Not just for the children's sake, but for ourselves. You see, we'd been married 13 years before we'd split up. It's difficult to cut off, to drop a person when you've known them that long, especially if that person is the mother of your children. I frankly admitted I missed her, and that I thought our separation was a mistake. We then started discussing a trial period together again, and that was when Diana came in. She wanted to know what was going on. I said I was having a private conversation with my wife. She said she was tired and she wanted to go to sleep. I told her to do just that. She insisted on being told what I was discussing with my wife.
Why did she insist?
Because she's the sort of person who sticks her nose into other people's business.
And did you tell her what you and your wife had been talking about?
No, I certainly didn't, but Beth did. Told her I'd suggested a trial period together again. Well, she laughed and went over and poured herself a drink. Then she sat down and said she liked a good domestic comedy. Why didn't we carry on with her as a studio audience? She could laugh at all the lies I spouted. Well, I told her to pack up her things and leave the flat. Then Beth started crying, saying, no, that's not the way to do it. She got frightened being on her own. Then Diana started shrieking at me. How dare I come round and upset my wife? I looked at her. I began to doubt my own sanity. I mean, she was making me into the intruder. One was shrieking, the other one was wailing. I said, if this is the sort of atmosphere my daughter's being brought up in, I'd take her away. I'd apply for custody. She then accused me of moral blackmail.
Did you attempt to take your daughter?
No, I did not, but I was worried about Diana, the influence she might have. I told her to mind her own business and not try and twist my wife up because of what had happened to her.
Why do you say that? What
Your Honor, I don't see how this bears on the charges.
I think we're establishing motivations and relationships. The witness may answer.
Well, when my wife met Mrs. Graham, she rather changed, became cynical. I later discovered that Mrs. Graham had not long got over a nervous breakdown. And while she was ill, her husband had left her. He then applied for custody of their children, and won. I think this experience has twisted her, and I believe that's why she pushed me down those stairs.
Your Honor, I think it's most improper that this witness is being allowed to make deductions that only a psychiatrist should properly make.
I do take your point, Mr. Hurst, but we are in a somewhat difficult area here. I think it is some importance for the jury to build a picture of attitudes and emotional involvements in this case. I will, however, when I instruct the jury, make it quite clear what you weigh with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. At what point did you decide to leave the flat?
When Mrs. Graham started shrieking at me, there was no reasoning with her. I picked up my son's plane and was on my way out when my daughter came running in, crying. The noise had woken her up. I picked her up and told her not to cry. I told her we weren't quarreling, and I tried to calm her down. But before I could put my daughter down, Mrs. Graham, who had gone into the kitchen, had come out wielding a knife. Well, she looked wild. She threatened to stab me if I didn't put my daughter down. I put Sandy down and tried to reason with them. Well, you can't reason with three hysterical women.
Did you at any time shout back or threaten Mrs. Graham?
No, I did not. I picked up my coat and went for the door of the flat. I didn't want to disturb my daughter anymore.
So why are you putting her through this then?
That will do.
She can't keep her mouth shut even here.
I can't stand your lying.
That will do. I will send the witness down for contempt if he addresses the defendant again. And you will be removed from the court and the trial will continue in your absence.
There was only one person in a state of hysteria that night.
Very well. If you insist on having this your own way, I will have you removed.
Your Honor, I beg leave to speak to my client. I don't think she realizes the consequences of the trial being heard in her absence.
She would appear to realize very well.
I beg leave, Your Honor.
Very well. But I do so with great reluctance.
Thank you, Your Honor. What's the matter with you? Why are you being so distracted?
I don't care if they find me
Look,
guilty.
I happen to be defending.
I don't care what you do.
Do you want me to withdraw?
I don't want to go on.
Is there something you haven't told me?
I want to plead guilty and get this over with.
Yes, Beth James said you might do this. She told me she wouldn't let you sacrifice yourself. What does she mean?
Mr. Hurst, will this take much longer?
Well,
I'm sorry, I won't say anything.
Your Honour, my client apologises for her behaviour. There'll be no more such outbursts.
Very well. I would remind the defendant that she will be given every opportunity to refute any evidence given in this court when the defence opens his case.
Your Honour, may I continue?
Certainly, Mr. Fry. Sharp on 2 o'clock, after luncheon.
All stand.
I put my daughter down, went to the door of the flat, out onto the landing, and she came after me shouting.
Did you shout back?
As I was going down the stairs, I called her an interfering bitch.
Did you threaten her?
I called her that.
I mean a physical threat. Did you do anything that she might have mistaken as a physical threat?
No, nothing at all.
You say you were going down the stairs when you shouted out. Why did you return?
I was on my way down, leaving, when Beth came out. I turned and saw her holding the banister. She was crying and rocking herself. It was then that Mrs. Graham shouted, "You're not getting her back." Beth started crying, getting even more hysterical. So I turned and went back up the stairs and took her in my arms. I held her, and I told her everything was going to be all right. And then I felt her tugging at me, pulling me away from my wife. I tried to take no notice. I wanted to comfort Beth. But she pulled very hard, and I was off balance, and she managed to drag me sideways. I grabbed hold of the banister, and Diana fell slightly. Then I noticed a door in the corridor open, and a lady come out to see what was going on. And then all of a sudden, Diana rushed at me and just shoved me. Well, I toppled back, but I managed to grab the banister with the tips of my fingers. But before I could regain my balance, she pushed again, and I went over and down the stairs. As I said to the police, that's the last thing I remember clearly. I lay there dazed. I had this pain in the back of my head. My leg was throbbing. My breathing was hurting. I thought I was going to die.
Now, according to the medical report...
Medical report?
The jury have copies, Your Honour. Exhibit 1, it's been agreed.
Is this it?
And if it's got medical report at the top, Your Honour.
I see. Is it in English?
It is, Your Honour.
You surprise me.
Perhaps you have a bad copy, Your Honour.
Perhaps you're right.
Would you like mine?
Thank you.
Now, Mr. James, according to the medical report,
Are you in difficulties, Mr. Fry?
No, I don't want to get the details wrong, Your Honour.
Read from the report.
You have my copy.
Your Honour, my learned friend is welcome to use my copy.
We haven't got all day to pass each other medical reports. Now, according to this, Mr. James suffered a compound fracture of the tibia, 3 lower ribs were cracked, and there was a gash at the back of the head that required 10 stitches. Is it agreed that these wounds were sustained as a result of the fall?
It's not in dispute, Your Honour.
Mr. James, were you facing the defendant when the alleged push took place?
Yes. I fell over backwards, smashing the back of my head on the stairs.
I see.
Did you at any time threaten your wife?
No, I did not.
Did you at any time when you were on the landing make any action that could have been interpreted as a threat to your wife or to the accused?
No, I didn't.
No further questions, Your Honour.
Mr. Hurst?
Thank you, Your Honour. So you were actually facing the accused when you fell?
Yes.
Confronting her?
That isn't so.
Do you often walk backwards down the stairs?
Of course I don't.
Well, on this occasion, you were standing at the top of a flight of stairs, you tell us, about to go down, facing the wrong way.
I'd just been pulled away from my
Or
wife.
pulled off your wife.
I was comforting
I
her.
suggest you were attacking her.
I don't go in for that.
Shaking
Were there
her,
any marks?
Shouting at her.
I was comforting her.
You told a friend to get out. You told her you were going to apply for custody of your daughter. You'd make your wife cry, and now you're telling this court you were comforting her?
I felt guilty.
Your own words.
That I'd made Beth cry. I wanted to make up for it.
Isn't it more likely that you were holding her and trying to hurt her a little more?
I felt guilty that I'd upset her.
I suggest that you held her, and you shook her, And you told her what a bad wife she was, and it was at this point that Mrs. Graham rushed in to protect your wife.
None of that is true.
It was a pretty violent push to make you fall backwards down the stairs.
She's that sort of a woman.
Oh, you mean she makes a habit of pushing people down the stairs?
Who knows?
Isn't it true that you went to that flat to cause trouble?
I did not.
Well, you arrived at the flat inebriated, didn't you?
I'd had a few drinks with my wife hours ago.
Why were you smelling of whiskey?
I'd had one drink with my wife before the trouble started. I mean, I wasn't staggering about when the police arrived.
Barely conscious when the police arrived.
I'd like to see how you'd be after a fall like that.
Your Honour, there is no evidence to substantiate these allegations of drunkenness.
Your Honour, I wasn't suggesting drunkenness, but it is true that a few drinks can make some men aggressive.
As there is no evidence, I think you should move on.
Thank you, Your Honour. Mr. James, you say you returned to your wife's flat at 11 p.m.
Yes.
Why didn't you ring your wife before you left?
Why should I?
It was late. She might have been asleep.
She never goes to sleep before 12.
But she was in bed when you arrived.
Well, she never used to go to bed that early.
You wanted to surprise her, didn't you?
Well, perhaps I should have phoned. I never thought.
Had you phoned, she might have said, "Don't come round. I'll bring Mark's plane round to you in the morning."
I wanted to talk to my wife.
What for?
About our marriage. Getting back together again.
Oh, so the plane was an excuse?
No, but after I told Mark to calm down, that I'd go and get his plane, then I thought, well, now I could talk to Beth.
Did you leave the plane at your wife's flat deliberately so you'd have an excuse to return?
I didn't need an excuse. I could have gone round there anyway, couldn't I?
Why didn't you talk about this reunion with your wife when you were there earlier in the day?
Because my son and daughter had been there. I didn't want to raise their hopes.
Oh, I'm sure they were playing. You could have found an opportunity to talk to your wife alone.
Yes, but then Mrs. Graham came in.
And you didn't want to talk about going back to your wife in front of Mrs. Graham.
Yes, that's right.
But you went over there to discuss the matter when you knew she was with your wife.
I went over there basically to get the plane.
I put it to you, the reason you went back that night was to bring the whole affair to a head. You'd found your wife was coping without you and you wanted to upset her. I mean, that's what you did throughout your marriage, isn't it?
What did I do?
Upset your wife.
Of course I didn't.
You told her she was useless until she believed she was useless.
I did no such thing.
You battered her into submission.
Battered? I've never hit a woman in my life, certainly not my wife.
Not physically.
Battered? What the hell has she been saying?
Not physically, emotionally. Isn't it true?
Look, my wife is highly strung. All right. When we were first married, she didn't have many ideas of her own, but I helped her.
Helped her or played on her weaknesses?
Look, it was me who went down those stairs, remember? Me who broke a leg, smashed my ribs, gashed open the back of my head. And yet you are trying to blame me, make me out to be the ogre in this business.
Oh, is there an ogre to be found?
Yes.
Who?
Her.
What, because she was giving support to your wife, stopping you bullying her? Is that what makes the defendant an ogress?
I went there to see if my daughter was being looked after properly.
You wanted to feel needed, separated from your wife but still dominant, isn't that it? But your wife had found someone to stick up for her. Now, I suggest that's why you lost your temper. You ranted and raved, and once outside the flat, you grabbed Mrs. Graham, and she pushed you, and you accidentally sustained those injuries.
I did not. I didn't touch either of them.
Look, why should a perfectly rational woman push you down a flight of stairs if you'd done nothing? I mean, you must have threatened at least one of them.
She did it!
But why? That's the question I'm asking, and you're not answering it satisfactorily. In fact, you're not answering it at all.
It doesn't take very much imagination.
Well, perhaps I'm rather short on imagination. Would you explain? Yes, there is no answer, is there, except for the obvious one. From the moment you walked into that flat, you were out for trouble. You walked in, you demanded to see your daughter. You shouted so loud you woke your daughter up, you threatened to take your daughter away, and finally, when your wife and the defendant had persuaded you out of the flat...
She pushed me down those stairs because Beth was thinking about coming back. That's why she did it. Beth wanted time to think about it. Give me time to think it out, she said. And that's why she did it. While I was holding Beth, comforting Beth.
If you're telling the truth, you're standing at the top of this flight of stairs, holding your wife tenderly, and this wicked woman rushes in and tears you from your wife's arms and flings you deliberately down a flight of stairs.
She was...
She was what?
She was jealous. She was blind with jealousy. That's why she did it.
Oh, now she's a jealous woman, is she? First you suggest she did it because of her past breakdown. Now you suggest she did it because she was jealous of you. Do you have a third reason why she pushed you?
Yes.
Yes. And it's more convincing than the first two, isn't it? Well, aren't you going to tell us?
She's bent. She's queer. She's a dyke. She's a filthy, perverted dyke. And she's living with my wife. That's why she did it. See, I was trying to take her lover away from her. Her lover's my wife.
The court adjourns to allow Mr. Hurst to confer with his client.
I know I should have told you about Beth and I, but it was impossible.
Well, it doesn't alter the fact that, thank you, that you lied.
Omitted a part of the truth. I did not lie.
Well, it alters the picture if it's true.
It doesn't alter the facts.
Well, we're going to have to admit it in court. I mean, there's now a motivation. You've damaged the case. I mean, the jury might well think that if you omit part of the truth, you may well omit part of what happened. Why don't you add that you were defending yourself?
And whose side are you on?
I'm on the losing side, by the look of it.
Do you think I'm guilty? That it was a cold act of violence?
I believe what you tell me.
I wanted to plead guilty. I would have done. But Beth wouldn't let me. She wouldn't give me the choice. If I'd have admitted that I was guilty, she would have come out with it. She would have told the world what she is, what we both are. Well, it doesn't matter for me. I've lost my children. Why are you looking at me like that?
Like what?
She's an attractive woman. I wonder how she came to be so sick.
No, I wasn't thinking you were sick. But you are an attractive woman.
And the next question is, isn't there anything I can do for you?
No, I wasn't thinking that either.
I see, I'm sorry. Well, now that I don't conform, now that I've singled myself out as being different, I suppose the chances of the jury believing me are less than evens, wouldn't you say?
Well, when you get into that witness box, the prosecution will really have a go at you.
No, I've had all that with the custody of my children. You may keep your daughter for the time being, but your girlfriend will move out. Should your girlfriend visit, then there will be a chaperone in constant attendance. Should your girlfriend go to the bathroom, then you must stay at the opposite end of the flat with your daughter and the chaperone. Should your daughter go to the bathroom, then the chaperone must at all times be with your girlfriend.
Yes. Wish us luck.
Do we need luck?
All we can get, wouldn't you say?
The case of the Queen against Graham will be resumed tomorrow in the Crown Court. Diana Graham stands charged with maliciously pushing Charles Edward James down a flight of stairs, thereby causing him grievous bodily harm. Mr. James has alleged that Diana Graham and his wife were living together in a lesbian relationship and is about to continue his evidence to the defence counsel, Mr. Hurst. The case you're about to see is a fictional one. The procedure, however, is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the general public.
Everything I've told this court so far has been true. I left out the fact that the accused had wormed her way into my wife's affection because I didn't think it had anything to do with this case.
Earlier, you said your wife had let you into the flat.
Yes, I'm sorry, I let myself in. I went into the bedroom, then I went straight to the sitting room.
It's not what you said before. You were lying on oath.
If I'd have told you that I'd gone into their bedroom, I would have had to have told you why. It was all part of the same
Yes,
thing.
well, perhaps you'd better explain why you've been giving us selected extracts from that evening and leaving these major details out.
Your Honour, there seems to have been a silence from both parties on this matter.
Your Honour, how can my learned friend know there's been a silence from the defendant when she hasn't given evidence?
You can hardly have escaped Your Honour's notice that my learned friend seemed somewhat surprised when this matter was brought up, or rather when it came to light, and that he did beg leave to take instructions from his client.
Thank you, gentlemen. There's no need for cat and mouse. It's pretty self-evident that both parties kept you in the dark. The matter will be quickly cleared up by asking why. Mr. James, When you were giving your evidence in chief, why did you not tell the court that you suspected a lesbian relationship between your wife and the defendant?
Why? I've built my whole life around my family. I love my wife and children. I felt proud to show them off, the men who work for me. As a couple, we were well respected in the community. I don't know. I suppose I feel ashamed. I didn't tell the whole truth because of my shame.
I think the court can appreciate what you're saying.
Do you feel great anger towards the accused?
No.
Did you feel angry the night you visited the flat?
Confusion. Something. Wouldn't you if you lived with someone for 13 years, lived a lie? Someone you thought you knew. Someone you didn't know at all.
Yes, I might well be angry. A man you could understand, but a woman? How could a woman take your place?
When I went into that flat, opened the bedroom door, they were there together. They weren't doing anything, but you could see that they were there together in that bed. And she said, the accused said, "Don't be upset. This is a beautiful scene. Now your wife is herself. Happy for the first time in years."
I suggest that you then dragged Diana Graham out of that bed, that your wife followed, that she was hysterical, that you shouted at each other and your daughter came in. I suggest that when you picked your daughter up, you threatened to take her away.
No, I left the bedroom, went straight to the sitting room, poured myself a whiskey. My wife came out after me. I told her I wanted her back. I mean, she isn't one of those. She's been pushed into it by her. Well, she's the strong one. I told my wife I wanted her back because it was the only way to make sense out of 13 years and 2 children.
Did you threaten to take your daughter away?
Oh, yes. I felt angry. My daughter living with those two. But then I realized I was behaving like a woman, being over-emotional. I calmed down straight away, and I said I would take an order out for custody of Sandy.
I suggest you didn't put your daughter down until the defendant threatened you with a knife, and it was only at this point that you decided to leave these irrational people.
Irrational?
Women, Your Honor, women from the witness's viewpoint, and that once outside you grabbed your wife and you were about to hit her, and that you were pulled off by the defendant.
Your Honor, there were no marks of violence on either of the women, nothing to substantiate.
And it was in this
allegation.
final struggle that you fell down those stairs.
You can say what you like, but it just isn't the truth.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Fry?
I have no re-examination, Your Honor. I call Sandra James.
One moment. How old are you, Sandra?
13, Your Honour.
Sandra, you're going to be asked some questions.
Yes, I know.
And you must answer them truthfully. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Very well.
Take the Bible in your right hand. Read aloud the words on this card.
I promise before Almighty God to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Sandra James, and you are at present living with your mother at Flat 10, Brock House, Shirley Road, Porchester.
Yes.
Now, Sandra, I'd like you to tell the court in your own words what you saw and heard on the evening of April the 7th this year.
I was in bed.
Yes, go on.
I wasn't asleep.
What did you hear?
Noises.
Sandra, just tell the story of that evening as you remember it. All that you remember. Do you understand? Good. Go on then.
I heard noises, someone crying, and Diana's voice. I got up and went into the hall. I could hear Daddy telling Mummy to be quiet. He said it had to finish. It can't go on. And Mummy was crying. And Diana told him to get out. He didn't belong.
Then what happened?
I started to cry, and then the door opened, and Daddy was there. He picked me up, and he hugged me. He said he was taking me home. Then Mummy tried to take me, but Daddy wouldn't let go, and they were shouting. Then the next thing, Diana was there, standing by the door, with a knife in her hand.
Exhibit 2, please. Is that the knife?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened next?
Daddy put me down. He said he was going. But he said he was going to have me live with him. Then he walked past Diana out into the hall.
He wasn't pushed out.
He pushed Diana out of the way.
Was this a rough push?
Mr. Hurst, I take it you have noticed the prosecution is leading.
I had noticed, Your Honour. There are questions I would ask myself.
Oh, very well.
Where was the knife when your father pushed his way out of the room?
In Diana's hand.
And did your mother and her friend follow your father out onto the landing?
Yes.
Where was the knife at this point?
Diana had dropped it on the floor.
So when she went out onto the landing, your mother's friend had her hands free so that she could push your father down the stairs?
Yes, that was a most improper question, Mr. Fry.
Your Honour, did you see what happened on the landing?
Mummy was holding onto the banisters, and she was crying. Daddy was going down the stairs when he turned and he went to Mummy and he held her.
How did he hold her?
He held her by the arms.
A few moments earlier, inside the flat, he'd been angry, hadn't he?
Yes.
When he was holding your mother by the arms, was he still angry?
I don't know.
What happened next?
He missed his footing and fell down the stairs.
Are you saying that he fell down the stairs whilst he was still holding on to your mother?
No.
Do you mean that he just fell down the stairs on his own?
Diana went between Mummy and Daddy. It was after he fell. I turned away.
You turned back?
A minute later, Diana was leaning against the wall.
Where was your father?
By the stairs.
Your father was by the stairs, and your mother's friend was leaning against the wall so that she could get a good push-off to throw your father back down.
This really won't do, Mr. Fry. You're not cross-examining.
Sandra, how was your father holding your mother?
He might have been holding her to hurt her.
But he didn't hurt her.
Because Diana was there.
Your Honour, may I treat this witness as a hostile witness?
On what grounds?
I wonder if the court might be cleared so that we might discuss certain matters in the jury's absence.
I can see no reason for the jury to be removed.
So that I can discuss my treating this witness as a hostile witness.
This is something of an elliptical conversation, Mr. Fry. I repeat, on what grounds? Hostility towards the father?
Yes, Your Honour.
Well, I see no bias. I think the child is a bit of a cleft stick, but there's no basis for calling her a hostile witness.
Did you see your father raise his hand against either your mother or Mrs. Graham?
No.
Were you afraid that your father might hurt your mother?
No.
So you had no further reason to believe that your father was going to hurt your mother there on the landing?
No.
No further questions, Your Honour.
Now, Sandra, you were asleep when you first heard voices in the sitting room.
Yes.
So you must have been a bit sleepy when the sitting room door opened.
Yes.
And then your father picked you up, Mrs. Graham threatened him with a knife, your father went out into the hall and Mrs. Graham followed.
Yes.
But she dropped the knife in the sitting room.
Yes.
So she had no intention of using the knife once your father had left the flat.
She dropped it.
Did you follow your mother and Mrs. Graham straight out onto the landing?
I heard more shouting, and then I went out.
Was Mrs. Graham leaning against the wall at this point?
She was on the floor, getting up.
What was she doing on the floor?
I don't know.
But you thought your father had pushed her, didn't you?
I don't know.
Who else was there? I mean, she didn't fall on the ground on her own, did she?
I don't know.
Your father pushed her down so that he could attack your mother. Isn't that what you thought?
Mr. Hurst, what the witness thought does not concern this court.
Your Honour.
It is quite clear that Sandra is a little confused as to details. I think the child is in some distress.
At last.
Sandra, there's no need for you to stay in the court. Is there someone to take her home?
Her aunt, Your Honour.
Thank you, Sandra. I have told you I want no comments from the dock. You would do well to remember that it is because of your action that the child had to be in this court in the first place.
Your Honour, I must object to that
The defendant will not utter another word until she gives evidence.
Your Honour, in view of your prejudicial statement, I cannot see how the jury can remain impartial.
What are you trying to convey, Mr. Hurst?
Why, I feel I'd like to apply for a retrial, Your Honour.
My comment was not meant in any prejudicial sense, Mr. Hurst.
Your Honour, I must insist that the jury can only take your statement as a prejudicial comment against the defendant. You said that it was because of her action that the child had to be in court.
Yes, I meant because of the emotional tangle between the adults. I meant that the accused was part of that emotional triangle and was one of the persons responsible for the child having to be here.
Then I respectfully request you should have said she was one of the 3 persons responsible for that child being in this court.
That would have been rather long-winded.
Your Honour, I'm grateful, too, for explaining your comments. I'm certain, however, that your shorthand created a false impression.
We all use longhand all the time. We'd never finish a case, Mr. Hurst.
Well, I heard the shouting, you see, so I went out to see what was going on, because we don't have much of that sort of thing. Oh, no, we don't have much of that sort of thing.
What sort of thing, Mrs. Dogood?
Trouble, hooliganism, you know, that sort of thing. Most of the tenants are long-standing and respectable. So when I heard the shouting, I thought perhaps some children from the new estate had invaded. But when I opened the door of my flat, I saw it was my neighbours, shouting and screaming at Mr. James. He was being pushed by Mrs. Graham, until eventually he pushed her aside and went to his wife. Then he held her, and he seemed to be talking to her, when Mrs. Graham pulled them apart. Then she stepped back and took a run at him, knocking him down the stairs.
Did you see Mr. James use any physical action against either of the women?
Well, yes. He pushed her away, as I said. Pushed her away to get to his wife. Nothing else. He didn't use his fists or anything like that.
How was Mr. James holding his wife?
Well, he seemed to be comforting her. He was holding her very lovingly.
Do you see anything in Mr. James's behaviour to justify the attack made upon him by the defendant?
If every husband who wants to hold his wife were to be knocked downstairs, it would be a pretty terrible world, wouldn't it?
Thank you, Mrs. Dogood.
You seem quite sure about what you saw on that landing that evening?
Yes, quite sure.
How much lighting was there?
Well, there was the light from the flat. That's Mrs. James's
Yes,
flat.
how much lighting was there in the hall itself?
Oh, well, the hall light is worked with one of those switches, a time switch,
Yes.
and it goes off a little after you've put it on.
Was that hall light on?
No, I don't think so.
No.
No.
So, did you stay by the door of your flat the whole time?
Well, it all happened very quickly.
I take it the answer is yes, you did stay by the door of your flat.
I didn't want to poke my nose in.
And were they by the stairs the whole time?
That's right.
What distance were you standing from the stairs?
I don't know.
That's rather a long corridor, isn't it?
Yes.
In fact, the distance is some 30 feet.
Oh, that much.
So, you were standing at the end of a long corridor, the only light being thrown from the open door of Mr. James. I put it to you, you couldn't possibly have seen what was going on.
Well, I could see that there were 3 people.
But you couldn't see in any great detail.
I could see enough.
You couldn't see the expressions on the faces of the people.
Well, no,
So you cannot positively say that the women were not being threatened by Mr. James.
Well, there were no fists flying.
Well, he might have been quietly menacing her, holding her, telling her he was going to hurt her.
But it was poor Mr. James who got thrown down the stairs.
Mrs. Dogood, do you like your neighbours?
I don't know them very well.
Were you aware that they were a lesbian couple?
There had been talk.
What sort of talk?
Not that I take any notice, but I have seen them.
Seen them what?
Holding hands.
Oh, I see. Did you approve of them living together?
Well, I certainly don't think they should be allowed to bring up a child.
Do you have any children, Mrs. Dogood?
No.
No. Do you think their way of life is morally reprehensible?
Yes, I do. And I'm not afraid to say so. I mean, there's so much of that dirt and that sort of thing these days, isn't there? It's everywhere. You turn on the radio or the television and it's thrust at you. I mean, there are no standards anymore. And that's why the young go around smashing everything up. They've nothing to look up to. I mean, as far as these 2 are concerned, I don't care about them. But that little girl, it's not right. I mean, what's she going to grow up to be? Like her mother? Oh, it's awful for a child to have a mother like that. It's against nature.
Yes, I know a lot of people share your views, but detesting these two women, seeing them as you do, as sexual predators...
Your Honour, that is not what the witness said.
She left that out, did she? Mr. Hurst, you mustn't tell the witness what you think she thinks.
Mrs. Duguid, I suggest you saw nothing clearly that evening and that your conclusions are a result of your prejudice.
I happen to be a Christian, and I have sworn on my oath...
Christians are meant to love their fellow men.
I do.
Except for those who deviate from your accepted norm.
I am quite sure that God would not condone two people living in sin.
Living in sin. I am quite sure God would be forgiving.
But it's the children I'm thinking
Look, what
about.
makes lesbians so particularly dangerous as human beings, as parents? What makes them worse than the ignorant, the violent, the inadequate, the crazy? I mean, which of us can claim that we have a better right to bring up children?
Are you a homosexual or something?
As a matter of fact, I am. No further questions, Your Honour.
Fry?
That concludes the case for the prosecution, Your Honour.
Mr. Hurst, would you like to call your first witness? Mr. Hurst?
I call the defendant, Your Honour.
Take the Bible in your right hand and repeat aloud the words on this card.
I wish to affirm. I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Mrs. Diana Graham, and you are at present living at Flat 10, Brock House, Shirley Road, Colchester.
That's right.
Diana, will you tell this court what took place in that flat on the evening of April the 7th this year?
It was about 11, and we were in bed. Quite suddenly, the bedroom door was flung open, and Charles stood there in the doorway. We were both reading. I was reading Gentlemen Prefer Slaves, as a matter of fact, which was rather funny.
You mean the book was rather funny?
It's one of the best books ever written about women's slavery to men. And even if you're not a feminist, it's a book of some literary merit. And it is very funny.
I see. You were reading, and Mr. James entered the bedroom.
Yes. I asked him what he wanted. He came over to me and started to drag me out of the bed. He said something like, "You filthy slut." Beth started crying, and she shouted for him to stop. To be fair, he did stop. He looked very confused. I told him to be calm. I said that there was nothing we could do. I said that Beth was happy because at long last she wasn't going against her nature. And I told him that what we had together was very good. He went into the sitting room, and Beth followed him. And I sat on the floor for a bit.
Why?
Well, he had dragged me out of bed, you see. And I wondered what to do. I wondered what to do. I wondered how he'd found out. I thought that we'd been very discreet about our relationship. And I waited for a while, and then I went into the sitting room, and he was sitting on the sofa crying, which was very sad in many ways, except when you think what he did in the past, how he treated Beth before she left him.
How did he treat her?
Well, when she was having their second child, when she was in hospital, he went off to Paris on business.
Your Honour, this has nothing to do with this trial.
No, but it helps to find the man as a shit.
That is quite enough of that. You will remember where you are.
So, he was crying and begging Beth to take him back, and I told him that she'd think it over.
Why do you say that?
To get rid of him. I mean, the man was in a state of hysteria. He got up and rushed to the door and opened it. And Sandy was standing outside. She must have been listening. She was crying. He grabbed her up into his arms, and he turned to Beth and said that she wasn't going to keep the child, that she wasn't fit to keep the child. Well, I was frightened then. I thought he might do something to Sandy or one of us. He was white with rage. He'd had a few drinks, but He wasn't drunk, but he wasn't rational either. So I went into the kitchen and I picked up a knife and then I went back into the sitting room.
Now, did you intend using this knife?
No. I intended pretending to use it if he tried to walk out of the flat with Sandy. He was standing there shouting at Beth, and I stood there waiting, the knife behind my back. Well, I wanted to keep things in hand if I could. I thought that if we could calm him down without threatening him, then that would be much better. Anyway, he moved towards the door, still holding Sandy, and he told me to get out of the way. And it was then that I showed him the knife. I spoke to him very quietly. I asked him to put Sandy down and come back the next day and we could talk, after a good night's sleep. And I asked him if he thought that would be a good thing to do.
You're very rational in such emotional circumstances.
Well, I wanted him to think that he'd made the decision, that it was his choice to put the child down and leave. I think if I'd have ordered him to do it, he would have grabbed the knife off me. Anyway, it seemed to work. He put Sandy down and then went out onto the landing, mumbling something about being sorry. I dropped the knife and I followed him out. Beth was just behind me. I thought I'd won. I thought I'd calmed him down. But then, suddenly, in the hall, he just went again. He turned on me and he pushed me against the wall. And we were eyeball to eyeball, and he grabbed me between the legs and he said, "What kind of a woman are you?" Beth was hysterical. He then pushed me down on the ground, and then he turned to Beth and he said that she was his wife and that he had every right to rape her there and then on the stairs. So I pulled him off her, and in the struggle that followed, he lost his balance and fell down those stairs.
The case of the Queen against Graham will be concluded tomorrow, when the jury will reach their verdict in the Crown Court. Diana Graham has been charged with maliciously pushing Charles Edward James down a flight of steps, thereby causing him grievous bodily harm. It happened on a visit to his estranged wife, Beth James. Mr. James claims he was discussing a possible reunion with his wife when, in a fit of intense jealousy, Mrs. Graham pushed him down a flight of stairs. In her evidence in chief, Mrs. Graham has stated that Mr. James attacked first her and then his wife. Mr. Fry is about to cross-examine. The case you're about to see is a fictional one. The procedure, however, is legally accurate. The characters are played by actors, but the jury is selected from members of the public.
Mrs. Graham, would it be true to say that at the beginning of this trial you had no intention of making it known that you are having a lesbian relationship with Mrs. James?
That is true. I wanted to plead guilty, but Mrs. James wouldn't let me.
You wanted to plead guilty because you are guilty?
Because I didn't want it known that I was having a relationship with Beth James.
You didn't want it known because it explains why you pushed Mr. James down the stairs, doesn't it? It explains the motivation for your vicious act.
You seem to think that because I'm a lesbian, I'm like some kind of wild animal, some sort of predator. Well, you're not alone. When I tell people what I am, they actually hide their children away from me. I wish I could explain to you what it's like.
I'm not interested in your lifestyle. I'm asking you if that's why you pushed Mr. James down a flight of stairs.
But you must let me explain.
No, you will answer the questions put to you, and that is all.
But you want a judgment based on prejudice?
Only facts relevant to the events that took place on April the 7th are the concern of this court.
But according to the prosecution, my life, what I am, the way I live, made me commit an act of violence that night. Well, surely I can try and explain myself, and by explaining myself tell you what went on in my mind and why I did what I did.
Very well. But make the most of this opportunity. After this, you will answer only the questions put to you by Mr. Fry, with no detours.
Thank you. I don't want you to think that I'm being patronizing, but you are mostly straight men and women here. You live in the accepted world, the normal world, with normal relationships, whereas I am a lesbian. Therefore, I'm a threat to men. People don't think that we exist outside of our sexuality. Because of what I do in bed, people no longer see me as a person. Because of what I do in bed, I shall probably lose my job now. Because of what I am, I have already lost my 2 children, whom I love very dearly. And because of what I am, my lover may lose her child. But what I am is important to me. And like any straight, I'm a person first with a personality. Charles James saw me that night as a sexual predator, a threat, if you like. That's why he went berserk and behaved like an animal. And I fought back like an animal, only to protect what was mine. Oh, he's not a bad man. A lot of men would have behaved in exactly the same way. But I can't be to blame for all that.
Mrs. Graham, would it be fair to say that you don't like men?
That would be pretty fair, yes.
How far would you say that your dislike of men goes?
It's war, isn't it, if you want to exist as an equal?
I don't think you've got very far to go, have you? You're a very bright, talkative woman.
And you're a very patronising barrister.
You see what I mean? You've written articles on the subject, haven't you?
On patronising barristers?
On women's subjugation to men.
That isn't a secret.
Do you know what this is?
It's a magazine called Out.
Mm-hmm. You've written articles for this magazine, haven't you?
Yes.
Did you write, sex with a man is often the beginning of a political education?
I wrote that, yes.
Your Honour, I don't see how this bears on the charges.
We do seem to have come rather a long way, Mr. Fryer.
Your Honour, how long have you belonged to the Women's Liberation Movement?
As an active member for the past 3 years.
And what does the Women's Liberation Movement stand for?
Women's liberation?
But to belong to the Women's Liberation
I do
Movement,
wish
would
you
you
wouldn't
say
keep
that you
saying it like that.
Saying what?
In that tone.
I don't understand.
Women's liberation movement.
I think you're being unduly sensitive.
I think we have every right to be sensitive. We are just emerging from slavery.
Not to say melodramatic.
Sometimes that's the only way to get through.
Melodramatic words and actions to get attention.
That's right, yes.
And would the Women's Liberation Movement approve of your shoving Mr. James down a flight of stairs?
That suggestion is beneath contempt.
But it's a man's world. Why not get rid of a few?
Oh.
Right. I've shown great patience in allowing you to explore the defendant's attitudes towards men. I must ask you to come to specific charges.
Did you write, when a woman gets married, she enters the dungeons of hell?
That was 3 years ago, yes.
You don't agree with marriage?
It's all right if you've got a sense of humour.
Would you explain that, please?
Well, men have all the rights in marriage, don't they? I think they call it responsibility. In exchange for financial support, a woman gives up her rights to her money, her possessions, her independence, and even her body. What a bargain it's turned out to be. All this talk about rights is really about possession. And you have no rights over another human being. That's what my articles say, and I am certainly not ashamed of them.
And so you say...
He has the right to see his daughter, to talk to her, but he had no right to threaten to take her away.
And is that why you attacked him with a kitchen knife?
I did not attack him to put his daughter down and leave the flat.
I submit that you were protecting your lover, Mrs. James, from her husband, a man who, in your opinion, had no rights. I suggest that you pulled him from her and shoved him with all your might and propelled him down a flight of stairs in a malicious and vindictive attack against the sex you have grown to hate.
My beliefs do not include violence. I was simply protecting myself.
Your neighbour didn't seem to think so. As far as she could see, you were on the attack.
I'm afraid she's lying.
You seem to be proud of what you are.
Yes, yes, I am.
A few years ago, you might have been ashamed.
Shame was much worse.
And with this pride has come a great militancy, hasn't there? You've displayed that in this court quite clearly.
No, I've talked about a woman's right to choose her own destiny.
It's almost an evangelism, isn't it? What was a cause is now a crusade. You're not content to say you must be liberated. You have another message. Your message for women is you must be liberated, but you must be lesbian to be liberated.
I've never said that.
Exhibit 3, please. Would you show it to the witness? Is that a photograph of you?
It was taken years ago.
It was taken at a gay rally last year. Would you read the banner above your head?
Where'd you get this? Some police file. The police were there.
The banner reads, "You must be gay to be alive."
I am gay, but I do not say that my sister should be gay. I do not make that judgment. But neither should she be afraid to reach out and embrace another woman. And you know something? I do have a lot of male friends.
I would like to read the final sentence in an article you wrote out in January of this year. You wrote, "We must devote ourselves to the destruction of men."
I meant the power structure, not the men themselves. A secretary shouldn't be content to be a support to a boss. She should strive to take a boss's place.
You wrote, "We must devote ourselves to the destruction of men."
The macho men who strut their phalluses as though they were some kind of fertility god.
Oh, yes, and you saw Mr. James as one of those strutting macho men, didn't you?
Of course, that's what he is.
Yes, the sort of man that you devote yourself to destroying.
What happens to him is a matter of supreme indifference to me.
When he arrived at the flat that night,
Broke into the flat.
when he entered his wife's flat with his own key, did you say, "Don't be upset, this is a wonderful scene, your wife is herself now happy for the first time in years"?
He broke into our bedroom.
Is that what you said to Mr. James?
Yes, I did.
Now, if he'd been a violent man, wouldn't he have reacted right away?
He dragged me out of bed.
On the contrary, he went into the sitting room to get himself a drink.
After he dragged me out of bed.
At no time in that flat did Mr. James attempt to attack either you or his wife.
He dragged me out of bed.
There were no signs of violence, and either you or his wife, you were examined by a doctor, weren't you, about half an hour after the incident?
Yes, yes.
Mr. James is a big man. One punch and that would have been it. A black eye, a bloody nose. He did nothing. The only thing he did was to pick up his daughter.
Which he had no right to do.
He had more right than you.
He had no right to threaten to take her away.
Any father would have reacted in the way he did, confronted by a domestic situation such as the one he found. Any father would have wanted to take his daughter away from the harm your insidious teaching might do to her.
The child has come to no harm.
Time will tell. I hope you are right.
I think what's important is the quality of the relationship. The love a child's given. The love, the stability, the attention a couple offer a child. That's what matters. Anything else is prejudice.
What clothes do you normally wear?
Pardon?
Clothes! You're looking very feminine today. Is that your everyday wear?
Yes,
You like feminine clothes?
Yes.
In the photograph at the gay rally, you were wearing a suit, weren't you, with your hair austerely short?
Shortish, yes.
What length was your hair on April the 7th?
This is ridiculous.
Nevertheless, answer the question.
It was shorter than now.
So, what sort of clothes do you normally wear?
I am most happy in casual clothes.
You mean trousers?
Jeans.
You wear masculine cut suits, don't you?
Well-cut trouser suits.
But suits all the same.
They are allowed in the royal enclosure.
But you would agree that you're rather dressed for the part today.
So are you, I would have thought.
Not to the extent of trying to change my personality.
I would have worn brogue shoes and a tweed skirt if that would have made you feel more comfortable.
What I am suggesting, as you are well aware, is that you are the stronger partner in your relationship with Mrs. James. If we were to apportion male and female characteristics, you would have the male.
I'm afraid I don't understand what you mean by those terms.
Including the aggressive tendencies.
I am not aggressive.
You were the one who picked up the knife.
I wasn't stabbed.
But the aggression was there. Mrs. James didn't pick up the knife, you did. We must devote ourselves to the destruction of men. At what point did your control break? Was it when you saw her husband holding her tenderly, when he was comforting her?
He was going to rape her.
A man who has just discussed a reunion with his wife does not then threaten to rape her. The jury may think you are lying. I submit that what alarmed you was not the violence of a man, but the love of a man for his wife. That you cold-bloodedly and deliberately pushed Charles James down a flight of stairs. And that you did so because of your jealousy of Mr. James in person and your blind hatred of men in general.
Do you wish to re-examine Mr. Hurst?
No, Your Honour.
Take her back.
I call the last defence witness, Mrs. Beth James.
Call Beth James.
The evidence I shall give should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Mrs. Beth James, and you live at Flat 10, Brock House, Shirley Road, Fulchester.
Yes.
Will you tell the court what took place on the evening of April the 7th of this year?
We'd gone to bed, Diana and myself. We'd been reading for about 20 minutes when suddenly the bedroom door flew open and standing there was Charles.
What happened then?
He stood there for ages, It seemed like ages, breathing through his nose, very angry. He went quite white. Then Diana spoke to him. He moved across, grabbed the bedclothes and pulled her out of bed.
He was white with rage. He burst into your bedroom and pulled the defendant out of bed.
Yes.
Go on.
I screamed and he stopped. He looked at me. He was sort of stunned and suddenly looked hopeless and quite lost, as if everything, all the energy had drained out of him. He staggered out of the bedroom. So I put on my dressing gown and I followed him into the sitting room. He was sitting on the sofa with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He was calm. The colour had come back to his face. He said he wanted to talk. So I poured myself a drink and sat on the chair opposite him. He said he wanted me back with him. I said it would never work. And he said that this time it would be different. He was older. He'd learnt a lot. He was no longer the same selfish person. All the relationships he'd had since we'd broken up were meaningless. He regretted everything, all the things he'd done to destroy our marriage. He said he'd changed. I said I didn't believe him.
What did you mean, changed? In what way?
Well, when we were together, after our first child was born, he used to have dreadful moods. He used to shout and slam about, especially after our second child arrived. He felt trapped, he said.
Felt trapped by his own children?
Trapped by the domesticity.
Which he now wanted back?
Well, I think it was because he couldn't bear the
How
thought of...
did he react to you telling him that you didn't think he'd changed?
Well, he said again that he wanted us back together. So I said to let me think about it.
Why did you say that?
Well, it was the only thing that calmed him down.
Well, did he believe you, that you might break off your relationship with the defendant?
We talked. I explained to him the great struggle I have with myself. The guilt. Ordinary people, I feel myself... Of course, Diana would say that that is my conditioning, my brainwashing. But you can't throw off all those years just like that. My friendship, my love for Diana is everything. It's beautiful. It's warm and it's gentle, and yet I shudder with guilt. I told Charles that if he hadn't gone to Paris when I was in hospital having our son, then I might never have fallen into a relationship like this. But it was a bad birth. And when he wrote saying he was with his secretary, the bottom just fell out of my world. Feelings just dried up. I lived and I looked after the children, but I couldn't care for another human being. And then Diana came along and understood and demanded nothing. And eventually I fell in love with her because I trusted her. She opened up this other side of my sexuality. It's something that we all have in us, but we kill it.
You told your husband all this?
Yes.
How did he react?
He cried. We sat there drinking. Then Diana came in.
Did she say anything?
I told her that Charles had asked me to go back to him. I'd said that I would think about it, and she said she thought that was a very good idea. She turned to Charles and she said, "Let Beth think about it. Why don't you go?"
How did the defendant ask him to go?
Quietly, gently.
And how did your husband react?
He went berserk. He started shouting at Diana to get out. She was the outsider. And then suddenly he darted over to the door leading to the hall and opened it. And Sandy was standing there crying. Well, obviously his shouting had woken her up. He grabbed her and said he was taking her. I'm afraid I became hysterical at that point. I just completely lost control. I tried to take Sandy from him, but he wouldn't let me have her. And he was tense and white again, and I thought, he's going to harm one of us, so I stopped. And then Diana was there, telling him to calm down and to put Sandra down. She had the kitchen knife. She was very quiet. And he put Sandra down. And it was like a miracle. He went out of the flat. Then Diana dropped the knife and came over and hugged me. And then I followed her out onto the landing.
Then what happened?
I don't truthfully know.
Why don't you know?
I was still in a terrible state. When I got out there, Charles turned, he pushed Diana aside, came towards me, and gripped my wrist.
How did he grip your wrist?
Like that.
Yes, how hard was the grip?
It was hard enough to hurt me. The other arm went round the back of my neck.
What do you think he was doing?
I don't know. But he was shaking and the colour had gone from his face again. I was frightened. And the more I cried, the harder he held me.
So you did not get the impression that he was trying to comfort you?
I don't think so. No, I'm not sure.
You just said he was hurting you.
It was as if he was frozen in anger. And then Diana was between us. And the next minute he'd fallen downstairs.
Now, finally, how did he fall down those stairs?
I don't know. I looked away. I suppose in the struggle.
You looked away. No further questions, Your Honour.
You have a very deep affection for the defendant, don't you?
Yes.
A very deep love.
Yes.
You wouldn't like to see her go to prison, would you?
No.
Is that why you've been lying to this court?
I've not been lying.
Lying in order to protect your friend?
I've told the truth.
You know, this whole case turns on what happened on the landing. Why did you follow your husband out, by the way?
I followed Diana out.
I see. Well, why did she follow your husband out?
To see that he left.
Why didn't you just bolt the front door?
He had a key.
Yeah, have you got bolts on the front door?
Yes.
Yes, and if you'd bolted the front door, he couldn't have used his key, could he?
No.
So why did your girlfriend follow him out?
I don't know.
You see, the picture you've given us is one of a man of wild moods, alternately getting excited and then calming down. You say that you and your friend did your best to get him to go quietly, and yet the moment he leaves the flat, you troop out after him. So what did happen on the landing? Did your friend say something like, she's mine and you're not going to get her back? Is that what made your husband come back to you?
I don't know why he came back.
Did you see him grab your friend between the legs and ask her what kind of woman she was?
No.
Do you mean he didn't do anything to her?
I don't know.
When he was holding you, did he say anything to you?
I don't remember.
You'd remember if he said he was going to rape you, wouldn't you? You'd remember that. That's not the kind of thing you could forget, is it? Now, did he say he would rape you there at the top of the stairs?
No.
No, of course not. Didn't he say, it's all right, we'll soon be together? And whilst he was holding you, gently, didn't the accused drag him from you and deliberately push him down the stairs?
She didn't push him. I'm sure when I looked at him, when he was standing with his back to the stairs, I'm sure that he smiled at me. A sort of smile. And I think he threw himself back deliberately. He did it so that he could destroy everything, so that he could break us up, so that he could take his daughter, so that he could get me back.
The defendant has stated that Mr. James fell down the stairs as a result of a struggle. Mrs. James has told you that her husband threw himself backwards down the stairs. That sounds in the extreme unlikely. You must consider whether Mrs. James is trying to protect the defendant. If you come to the conclusion that Mr. James was, in fact, pushed down the stairs by the defendant, you must consider these points. If the fall was accidental as a result of a struggle, then the defendant is not guilty. But if you believe that the defendant deliberately and maliciously pushed Mr. James over with the intention of injuring him, then she is guilty. I don't think you should trouble yourselves with the alternative verdicts, but treat it as a case of assault with intent or nothing at all. In this case, guilt turns on the intention and not the act itself. Now, how do you treat the daughter's evidence? Do you think she was telling the truth? She was trying to protect everyone. Mr. James maintains that he was pulled away from his wife, and whilst trying to regain his balance, the defendant pushed him. You must consider the evidence of the neighbour. Her evidence closely follows the sequence of events as set down by Mr. James. If you believe these two witnesses, then the defendant is guilty. Of course, if you have any reasonable doubt, then you will find the accused not guilty. Will you now please retire, elect a foreman, and consider your verdict?
Members of the jury, will your foreman please stand? Just answer this question, yes or no. Have you reached a verdict upon which you are all agreed?
No.
Judge Waitman sent the jury back to reconsider.
Have you reached a verdict on which the majority of you are agreed?
Yes.
On the charge of wounding with intent, do you find the defendant, Diana Graham, guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
You have been found not guilty of the charge, and you are free to leave the court. However, should you be brought back here as the result of more interference with this family, I warn you that the consequences could be severe.
Court will rise.
A chance for you to join another jury in assessing the facts when our cameras return to watch another case in the Crown Court.